All right, everyone. Welcome once again. It is Friday, and it is the Manufacturing E-commerce Success Show. I am one of the co-hosts, Damon Pistolka, and the other co-host, the guy with the fabulous hair, Kurt Anderson, is not here today. He's traveling, so we have guest host, co-host Gail Robertson with us today, and we're going to be talking with Wesleyne Greer about using curiosity in sales. So I'm happy. So Gail, how are you doing today?
I am great. I am actually house and dog sitting, and I'm on the lake. So I get to go out first thing in the morning. Everybody knows how I like to have my cold shower. So instead, I do a dip in the lake. Woohoo!
That's awesome.
Yeah. I still don't know about the cold shower in the morning thing, but yeah.
Life changing.
Yes. Well, I'm excited for us to have the conversation today, and it's great to have you here today, Wesleyne. Why don't you start off, first of all, kind of giving us your background, and if people don't know, just kind of how you made the journey from being a research chemist to a sales leader training expert. I don't even know the right word to say, because because you've done so many things. But just let us hear the journey, and then we're going to start talking about curiosity.
Awesome. And I think I'll kick that journey off because I am a research chemist. I like to call myself a recovering chemist now. And because I was curious, and I always would be asking everyone within the organization, like, why am I doing this work? What is the purpose of this? What is the bigger picture? Help me understand. It really drove me to realize that my passion was not behind the bench, right? So what I wanted to do, I really wanted to understand, to do more. And that's what led me into sales. And when I got into sales, I finally figured out what I wanted to be when I grew up. I loved everything about it. I love everything about sales. And I made a really fast ascent from individual contributor to international sales manager. And I realized the gap in the marketplace, that about 93% of sales training is focused on the people, the salespeople, the tactics, not the behavior change, not the managers. And so that's what we do within my organization, really focusing specifically on these highly technical fields: science, technology, engineering, and manufacturing, and helping those teams get stronger by imparting upon them behavior-based sales development.
Awesome. And Gail, as the guest host and the co-host and the chief curiosity officer, this has got to be a conversation that you're going to have a lot of questions and input in.
Well, I do. And, Wesleyne has been on my show as well, and she is just a wealth of knowledge. So I invited quite a few people from my world of manufacturing to come out because, it is all about being curious, and also, and I'm sure we're going to get into that, talking about transferable skills, because I believe everyone in an organization is part of the sales process, just like everyone is a recruiter, because you are all out there representing your company at some point or another. So, and what I'd really like to know is about the process that is needed for salespeople, because we really need to dig into how process is a part of that. Because, I know I do keynote talks and motivational talks, and a lot of people say, oh, I just wing it. And I'm like, it'd be like going to a sales call and say, oh, I'm just going to wing it. And, there's things, maybe we can talk about that process and research. So if there's any tips, Wesleyne, that you would have around the importance of process.
Yeah, I actually had this conversation with someone. They reached out to me on LinkedIn late yesterday evening. They're like, I'm so frustrated. These things are happening. And so peeling back the onion, what I realized is he's a big picture guy, right? And as a big picture guy, he sees the vision, he sees the mission, but there are all these little individual steps that you have to do to get from point A to point B. And an example that I like to use is, you walk out of the house in the morning, you get in the car, you have to back the car at the driveway. But what's the first thing you do? Put your foot on the brake. If you don't put your foot on the brake, you're never going to back out of the driveway. And a lot of times those little things that we just start doing like the back of our head, we forget that. And if we really want our sales teams, our sales organizations to develop, we have to give them the roadmap, like each individual step. So they only come to us with the high level questions, not every little thing that's bothering them. And so really the importance of process is to have one that is developed not based on the people who you have currently in the seat, but on the needs of the business and what it takes to get from A to B to C to Z.
Yeah. Go ahead, Gail.
I was just going to say, is there any, let's talk about the dreaded CRM, because we always hear about that with sales, and salespeople hate it. And so I'd like your thoughts on, what do you think about CRMs, and what about salespeople who say, I hate CRMs. I'm a salesperson. I should be selling, not filling out CRMs.
So the thing that I challenge salespeople with is when they tell me they hate CRMs, I ask them a simple question. I say, okay, tell me about your best customer. And they'll tell me all of these amazing things about their best customer. And I'm like, well, the last meeting you had, who was in attendance? I can't remember. What exactly did you talk about? What were the problems they were trying to solve? What projects do they have coming up for the next 6 months? That's when things start to get fuzzy. There is no way you can be a strong salesperson and remember everything. Like your pipeline should be so full that you know the projects you have going on, you know your customers, you know all the deals, but you don't know each little teeny tiny thing because you have so much going on. And so if you're not using a CRM, you're not honoring the process, because another thing that leaders should be looking at is don't beat people over the head saying you got to make this many calls or this many emails or have this many opportunities in. What we really want to look at is the conversions. How many people are going from initial meeting to a discovery meeting? Like, what is that conversion rate? Okay, that's good. Now, in that discovery meeting to the demo or to the proposal, what's that conversion rate? And that's what we focus on. We focus on what's broken in the process when we know where we're converting.
Yeah. Yeah, that conversion rate is so important because, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you increase your conversion rate, you don't have to get more customers to increase business or potential leads and all that. So,
and
exactly.
Damon, that was just such a meta moment. I just want to go back because this is curiosity in action. What Wesleyne did just now is she, instead of saying, hey, you got to use a CRM because we've bought it and we've paid for it. And you know what? The salesperson won't care about that. But those questions you asked, I want any sales manager listening right now, that was brilliant, because instead of forcing someone, you just ask the questions and then you get deer in the headlights, right? Because if you start asking all those questions, where is it documented? And all of those questions are so valuable to building the pipeline. So I just wanted to really, highlight that, because that to me sums up why curiosity and sales, they go hand in hand like peanut butter and jelly. Mm-hmm.
100%.
And the thing is, when you help somebody get to their own conclusion, they're going to follow through. But if you beat them down the head and say, we spent so much money and leadership is telling me to do this and I got to do it, they're like, that means nothing to them. It goes straight over their head. So you help them understand the reason why. Because once you help a salesperson realize that the CRM is a tool to help them make money, not to beat them over the head, then they will use it. Like top salespeople use the CRM. Top salespeople like the CRM because it helps them achieve their goals, right? So it is our job to help our salespeople understand, no matter what tool we have, what we're using, whatever it is, we need to help them realize how it can help them actually get to the next level, achieve their goals, make more money, whatever they're trying to do.
Yep. And it's so true too. When you see a top salesperson using a CRM, they can be so much more efficient. And just like you said, the CRM holds these little details that make a big difference when you're talking to a customer. If you wrote down the big problem they were having, and it wasn't even a problem that you could help them with, but you wrote it down in the CRM. When you come back, you say, did you get that capital problem, or did you get that HR problem figured out with your your general manager, whatever the heck it was. And that stuff is or even kids' birthdays, or that their kid plays, jazz band, whatever. Those kind of things are so critical when you really want to be a good salesperson and build the best relationships. And because going back to your question, you can't remember everything.
Exactly. Yeah. Like there are some deals that we have stalls. I mean, yeah, I'm a sales consultant. I'm a sales pro, but I'm not like a wizard. So we have some deals, and literally today, going back in the CRM to Quiet Friday, gonna record a couple videos, say, hey, last time we spoke, you mentioned this, and that was going on. Just wanted to check in. Is that still a challenge for you? Are you still experiencing the same challenge? Not buy from me, buy from me. Like Gail says, be curious, right? Like, is this challenge still something that you guys are experiencing? Is that roadblock still there? Let me help you unblock that. And when you take that curiosity in sales, and you're not always the authority, but you actually want to learn and want to hear from your customers, that's how you get things over the finish line.
Yeah. Yep. And John Boglino said something here about, or that they went on vacation. That's a great one. Because as I was, you can't tell it, but I did a fair amount of studying about people and interviewing and what's effective interviewing things, right? And one of the things they always talk about is to understand what people are passionate about and ask them questions around that. So your CRM can help you remember that Wesleyne is very passionate about her daughter's blah, blah, or her son's college, whatever it is. And so you can make those deeper connections with those people. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, I used to be just like, I am a recovering journalist, and the same thing when you were wanting to remember things. Now, this was someone else had this, not me, but remember the Rolodex, and I just got rid of my old one that had like cards in it with people's name, phone number. And I went through and I had like notes in there about the various people when I talked to them. And that was the way we used to do it before you had the electronics. So, and I remember someone that I worked with in the newsroom, he was a whiz at this. He wrote down everything, including, if it was the, secretary receptionist at a certain office, he'd have everything down. So he'd call up and he'd say, hey, Barb, oh, how's your daughter? And then she'd be like, oh, and next thing he's getting right through to the person he needed, because she would put the call through. So there's different ways of using this. Sometimes it's not just about the sale. Sometimes it's also about, accessing people who will open a door for you. So it's not, and Wesley, maybe you can talk about this too, in terms of the sales process. Is it always just the person you're trying to sell to that you want to get to? There's a leading question.
Yes, I love this, because when we're in B2B sales, this is a complex sale. So what is a complex sale defined as? It is if you have multiple decision makers, or if you have a long sales cycle, which is more than a couple weeks. I consider that a long sales cycle. So when you have this complex buying situation and there are all of these people that are involved, a lot of people get it wrong. They want to go to the decision maker. They want to go to the one who's signing off the check, who's approving the budget, but they don't have time for you. They don't have time. They need high level bullet points. You need to focus on your internal champion. The internal champion is the person who speaks for you when you are not around. That is the person who goes to bat for you. They bring the right people to the room. They get the budget. I have an internal champion in one of my companies, and she's amazing. She will send me an email. She'll send me a text message. I just had a 30-minute conversation with this person about your services and why they need you. She holds zero budget authority. Zero. She has no budget, but she knows how to go get it. So that is also information you need in your CRM, because you need to know, who is my internal champion? What do they value? What are the problems they're having? Because that internal champion, they're the ones who feel the burn, right? So if you're selling, let's say, HR software, don't go to the VP of HR. They don't experience any of the challenges. Go to the HR generalist who gets a phone call every 5 minutes about how hard it is to run payroll, why this isn't. That's who you focus on. Think about the person with the biggest problem, the biggest challenge within the organization.
Oh,
I know this, as Kurt would say, let's just take a moment of silence there,
yeah.
because the internal champion is the one, or
Yes.
gatekeeper, or what, even those two are so key, because if you can't get past the gatekeeper, you're never getting anywhere. And if you don't get the internal champion, you probably will not get your sale completed, because you need internal champions, especially in a long sales cycle.
Absolutely. If you don't define that person, if you just go to that decision maker, which is a department head, the CEO, the VP of this, literally they need bullet points. They don't have they're not going to sit through a demo. They're not going to take your code. They're not going to do any of those things, right? So refocus. When you think about who is that ideal client profile, when we build out ideal client profiles, we build it around the internal champion. That's the first one we build. And then I'm getting real deep into sales right now. But then we have the internal champion, we have the decision maker. And then I say we have a team of influencers, right? And that team of influencers, those are the people who only speak when spoken to, right? So they're not going to go to bat for you, but they're going to be like, oh yeah, that person, I read Google reviews about that company and they're really, really bad. We shouldn't do business with them. Or a good influencer is a purchasing agent. They never want to push anything through, but you don't need to convince them. You talk to your internal champion, they get them on board to do whatever needs to happen. So you have to think about all of these things in a buying situation. And so when we talk about being curious, hitting our sales quotas, doing what we need to do, the first step is to map out who in your target market, who are we talking to? Are we talking to the right people? Am I talking to my decision maker, or am I talking to my internal champion? And then who are those influencers, right? Like if you're a manufacturer, you may need to go into the shop floor, it's your customer, and walk around the person who's actually running the machine, running the CNC. That person is who you need to talk to, because that's an influencer. They're going to go talk to the operations manager and be like, I really like this piece of equipment. It works well. So that was a lot, but that's it's so important.
Go ahead, Gail.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say I'm a visual learner. So I just see all of these people in a visual circle, where you're going to all the various people and the spoke. Eventually you want to get to the actual decision maker, but you as a salesperson, you don't have to be that person you're on the outer circle trying to get to the next circle. And I just said this to someone recently that was, I was doing some consulting with them around trade show planning. And I said, no, don't reach out right away to the people, because you'll scare them. As soon as they see that you're anything sales related, they're going to back off. I said, go to people in the outer circle and the marketing people like me. We're always looking for information, so educate us, open it up. I have met people that I've actually gone to my clients and said, hey, what about this company? They have really great information. So I'll put a plug in for reach out to marketing people, because we're always looking for information. We're looking for ideas. And so that's another spoke in that wheel.
John actually had a question in there.
I'm going to roll down to that, because I just want to, first of all, take a moment to say thanks, John, Valerie, Katie. We got Fazia. Shoot, man, we got a lot of people in the room here. Dylan, Greg.
Greg's
Bonnie,
here. Woo, Bonnie.
Whitney,
wow, we got Whitney's here.
And then we've got Lal and
Christina,
Matt.
Christine. Oh,
yeah. Then we got John's got some questions down here. Greg's back in here again. But one of the things, we'll get to this, discuss keys to aligning sales and marketing. We might hit that. But what was the question you were specifically talking about that John had, Wesleyne?
The alignment of sales and marketing. Yeah.
And the thing that I'll just comment on really quickly, if we're talking about curiosity, and I was as we were listening to Wesleyne talk about this, think about the questions that she was asking, how these are curious questions. Who is an influencer? How does this work? Who do we need to get on board to do this? These are all curious things that you do naturally that some people, sales leaders and salespeople, don't quite understand, because if you try to sell too fast, you're not going to be as effective. So one of the questions I had, how do you foster or teach people how to change their thinking about this?
So the one big thing that I tell people is I'll be nice and I'll say, be quiet and listen instead of what I wanted to say, right? But be quiet. Because when you're in a sales environment, you should be talking 20% or less, right? So why are you talking so little? Because you need to be in your prospect's world. You need to not be thinking about your products, your solutions, what you need to do tomorrow or the next meeting. You need to step into their world. And so by stepping into their world, you're asking a nice open-ended question and you just let them talk. Because people love talking about themselves. And if you ask the right questions in the right manner, you draw out all the information from them. And you know that you have achieved your goal when you get to the end of a 30-minute conversation. They're like, thank you so much for helping me. Like, you really helped me solve that problem. Not, okay, I got another meeting because you're too salesy. So one of the most important things to do is practice the art of active listening. And how do you even do that? Like, okay, Wesleyne, I know I hear this all the time as a buzzword, but you start with a nice open-ended question when you're opening up your meeting. So for instance, if I was going in and I was talking to somebody and maybe they said they have a problem with their sales organization, I would ask them, can you help me understand how your sales organization operates? Or walk me through your sales process. That's a whole, I mean, they could be talking for days about their sales process. And then I'm not going to interrupt them. I'm just going to listen. And then I restate what they say back to me. So what I heard you say was 1, 2, 3 things. And those things, those most important things are the ones that you keen in on that you know are big challenges that you can solve. And then you say, well, why does this seem to present a big problem for you? You never talk about your products. You never talk about your services. You don't talk about yourself. Like, it is all about them. Nobody cares about you. We don't need to hear about you at all. And literally at the end of a strong sales meeting, the last 5 minutes you reserve for, man, this was really great. Based on what you said, this is how I think we can help you. This is how we can get started. Can we schedule another time so I can tell you a little bit more about how we can work together? And so again, we're talking about the sales process now. So that was like a discovery call. Now the next meeting is taking their unique problems and aligning them with your solutions. So it shouldn't just be a boilerplate deck. We don't do boilerplate decks. We don't do boilerplate proposals. Their problems, your solutions. It should be a one-to-one symbiosis, right? And that is how you develop that strong consultative view where people are like, yeah, this is what I need. This is not a salesperson. This is somebody who understands my challenges and who can help me achieve those goals.
Boom.
And
again,
another meta moment here about curiosity and questions, because it's all about asking those questions. And we, I often talk about this, that curiosity, it's sort of almost beaten out of us from our childhood, because we used to ask a lot more questions, and we really need to go back into that world where, just like Wesleyne said, it's about asking, why is that? Why did that happen? Why are you using your current provider? Why? I mean, there's a lot of whys. And really try to find out what is it that makes them tick. Because I've found one time when I was asking questions, this was when I was doing some fundraising sponsorship, and there was no way they were not going to sponsor, but it had nothing to do with the organization I was involved with. They had a relationship based on a business like the plan with them. But what he said is, and I said, no problem. I gave him the information, and it was down the road. He called me when he had a problem with that business. He wanted to then switch over. So, or that organization. So sometimes it's just, be there for information and not always have the goal of selling, but it's about asking questions like Wesleyne said. So again, meta moment of, anybody want to go back? I think you should write down some of these questions that are being discussed,
Yes.
because sometimes it's okay to do that. Like go back to the show, repeat, and because you asked some really good questions, Wesley, especially those early ones.
Yeah. And then Kurt's supposed to be traveling today, but I think he fooled us, and he's probably just drinking tea, listening to us someplace.
I think he's sitting with his feet up somewhere, laughing.
Yeah,
sitting drinking a margarita poolside somewhere.
Yeah, having a good time. But that is awesome, and the way that you were asking the questions, and then because they're, again, curiosity, I think, can be taught. Even because once you learn it, you'll naturally do it. But like any habit, once you start to do it, because you said the right questions and then restating the problem, and then you even went through it, the most important and the biggest challenges and why it's a challenge, and just keep going down that. And it really, I think, is something that you can teach people by giving them the right steps and then helping them work through those. That's cool. So Greg had the question about aligning sales and marketing. Let's go back to that because I do want you guys to cover that a little bit. Discuss what are the keys to aligning your sales and marketing teams.
So, I just don't understand why sales and marketing have so much fighting, right? It's like, we all want the same thing. Why do we always have to fight? But I often find within organization, that's what happens. The sales and marketing, they're always butting heads. And I find that one of the challenges is lack of communication. Because when we work with sales teams, I tell them, I'm like, yeah, okay, you have to manage your customer. You work with the person that you're in front of, but you have to manage across too. You have to understand marketing. You have to understand operations, because marketing is the in and operations is the output, right? So as a sales leader, as a salesperson, you really want to understand who is surrounding you and the things that are working and are not working. So just like I talked about in that sales process, looking at the conversions, right? A lot of times in marketing, they're looking at the open rates. They're looking at, different demographics, how things are working here and there. The responsibility of the sales team is to communicate with marketing, not just beat them up and tell them what's not working. Let them know what is working. Say, you know what? We just closed this deal from an inbound lead, and they said that they saw us on this social media channel. They downloaded this white paper. They did all of these things. Thank you. Like, first of all, thank people for doing good. Don't just beat them up for not doing what you don't want them to do. Thank them for doing good. Okay, let's start there. And then you have conversations, and you guys should be very aligned. So when we talk about that internal champion, that is really how we develop the ideal client profile in different verticals, different parts of the countries, different industries. And we want to translate that information and work with the marketing team so they're targeting that internal champion. Maybe they're targeting the decision makers. Maybe they're targeting the influencers, right? And so once they start speaking to the right person, everything falls into alignment. And it has to be something that we are conscious of. And the sales leader needs to help their team understand that marketing is here to work with us, not against us. It is not okay to say, oh, those marketing leads are all crap. Oh, they keep doing this webinar and it's not converting. Oh, this happens, that happens. That's not okay. We need to get into a room. We air all of the things that we have challenges with. We put them off to the side, and then we start working on solutions. And we have to make sure that we're constantly continuing to chat with each other, challenge each other, because marketing is like sales doesn't know how to close these deals. Sales says marketing gives me bad deals. Where does that come from? Miscommunication, right? So it all goes back to talking things through.
Boom. Once again.
That is, and and I think I know where Greg also might have been coming from, because we've had discussions about this too. It's like, from a marketing perspective, it's often has to do with, there's assumptions on both sides, but I think the problem is exactly what you said, Wesleyne. It's about communication, but also what I call connecting the dots, because often what happens is, I've done both. I've done marketing and been more on the sales, fundraising side of things. And you sometimes have to really draw pictures for people of why is this important? Why is it important to do a webinar? Why is it important to have a brand identity? And then I start asking again, it goes back to curiosity, asking questions. What happens when you're doing interviews with people at sales meetings? Do people know when you call? Because here's the thing, when you call, do people know the company? Can they do a search of your company and find out that you are, out on social media, that you have a strong website? So sometimes it's asking also questions about, now, have you had any sales leads come in that didn't come, like, where, because sometimes there's, like, I call it the mystery. Oh, where did this person come from? Well, they didn't just drop in from space. They found you for a reason, right? So asking those questions. And I'm wondering, Wesleyne, if you have any examples or a story or something that shows maybe, how a sales technique or a sales process has worked through a process that you've recommended.
Okay. Yes, I'll do that. I want to say something about marketing before we wrap up and go to the next topic. Yep. So a lot of times, exactly what you said is so important. I have literally had people that have said, Wesleyne, I've been following you on LinkedIn for the past 18 months. I just love what you're doing. I'm like, who are you? I've never seen, like, you've never commented on anything, never liked anything. Are you even in my network? Like, I don't even know who you are. That's how marketing works. When you are doing marketing, it's the awareness of the brand. It is awareness of the company. It is awareness of the products. So a lot of times you can't always say, oh, what's the ROI on this? Or how did that work? Or how did that work? Because you may not see an immediate effect of it. But doing marketing right is all about consistency. And so if you show up, as Gail says, show up and show out every day, then, what is it? Show up, suit up, show out. Something like that.
Sign up, suit up, show up.
There we go. I just need the show up part, right?
Show up is the most important.
show up. That's the thing. That's the key with marketing, right? You really have to know this is a long game, and all of the small little pieces that you're putting out today, you may not get any return for 6 months, for 6 years, but it's working to build the brand awareness and attract people. And so now switching over to sales processes, really I started laying out a very nice, simple sales process. And when we take our sales process and we really break it down into those small little chunks, that's one of the words I like to use, a small little chunk, and think about what you need to do each step of the way. That's really what sets people up for success. So our goal is to have a very process-driven organization. We put the right people on the bus, we give them a process, and that leads to profitability. So as a sales leader, you're not answering questions like, oh, I just got this inquiry. How do I respond? You go and look in your process, you look in your playbook, and you're like, I got it 80% done. Now, manager, can you help me get it to the finish line the 100% of the way? So when you lay out the process, you have to remember what it was like to not know anything. And that is one of the key things that people do wrong in defining a sales process. They're thinking about it at this 100,000-foot view, but they forget, like I used initially, like when you get in the car, the first thing you do is put your foot on the brake. You do it like clockwork now. But if you don't put your foot on the brake, we're not moving ever, right? We're just going to sit there. And so when I say, okay, so this is the way that we set up a call. This is what we need to do to prepare for a call. Now we're in the call. These are the things I want you to look for. These are the things you need to ask. And before I even let you loose to do them yourself, you're going to watch someone. You're going to shadow them. You're going to answer questions. So really breaking things down into the most minute possible way. And when you're able to do that, I mean, your profitability will increase 5 or 10-fold, all the way up. So really focus on the small itty bitty pieces. And when we work with organizations and develop the sales process down to the minutia, the sales leader gets so much time back. And not only do they get their time back, they also see their revenue increasing without them having to touch everything. So that is really the key to a good sales process.
Yep. And it does, like you said, when you break it down into the smaller details, like in our discovery call, what are the key pieces of information that we need? What are the questions we're going to use to get that? And then you go, people, you get to, as you do those, you begin to understand what are the things I need to get here, and I make sure I get them. You can put them on a checklist, you can do whatever you want, but you make sure you get those, because then you know the next step in the process is going to need that information. It's going to use that information, how it's going to be used, and what do I do after that? Because how many salespeople are actually high-level salespeople without a process? Not very many. Right?
I was like, let me count. Yeah. And it's like they have this process in their head. Yeah. And so if you're a new sales manager that you're coming to a team, you're inheriting a team, you may not understand the minutia of that organization. You know how things work in general. So you always want to kind of do a brain dump with your top performer and your bottom performer, because you want to see the things that the top performer is doing to help drive their business. And then you want to see what the bottom performer is doing or isn't doing that's not driving their business. So you can ensure you build in, that's because you build in those stop signs, like, stop. If this is happening, you're not doing something right. If you have 0 meetings in a week, then you're not doing something right. Like, you have to put those stop gaps in. And the way that you learn that is based on the bottom performer. So even if you're not new into your organization, just by doing that and asking your top salesperson, a great question I love to ask is, tell me how you spend your day. A top salesperson is going to go from 8 to 6 and tell you everything they do when they travel, when they're in the office. A bottom performer is going to be like, well, I check my emails, then I do some call. Like, they don't have that frame of reference. So those little things help you get a hold of what's happening within the organization. Oh, it goes back to curiosity, right? Question.
It does. I'm just like, this has been like a drenching of curiosity in everything we've talked about today.
And, that idea of asking questions, it's really important. We've talked a lot about curiosity from a B2B for going to, people you're trying to sell to, but it's really important for your teams, for people that you're working with, because a lot of times people have fear because they think they're going to get in trouble. And I think, Wesleyne, like, a bottom performer, someone who's not performing well, they just may need help, but they're not asking for help, but they could be one of your top salespeople, but they've got stuck somewhere, right? And often what happens, that's where communication. Now, I am one of the biggest advocates for communications, asking questions. So I always say, it's going to be the greatest thing you love about me, or it's going to be, right? And I've seen both, personal and professional relationships. It matters, because if you're not communicating, if you're not getting to the point that you understand where the problems are, I will tell you, right? And Wesleyne, I'm sure you'll agree with this, that it will blow up eventually. So if you want to avoid that, ask why, or what is happening? And this is where trust comes in too. So Wesleyne, is there any tips you could give to sales managers that may be listening right now as to how to approach that with their team when they maybe have to reset or do something differently to get your sales, instead of when you ask your sales, well, how's it going? Good. Everything's good. And it's not good. Any tips?
So a sales manager should be spending about 80% of their time coaching their team. And a part of what they should be doing when they're in that coaching mindset is, one of the key things I tell them all to do is they need to do ride-alongs, Zoom alongs if people aren't going in person, or if that's not how your business is. But you really need to travel with your salespeople, and you need to go to meetings with them. And your job is to not be the sales manager. Your job is to be the observer. So you have your little notepad, your iPad, whatever in the back, and you're just taking notes. And you set things up. So you ask them, okay, so what's the goal of this meeting? What are we going to do? You sit in the meeting, you take your notes, you're the observer. And then after the meeting, you're like, so let's talk about what went well, what didn't go so well. You may give them feedback then, or maybe you reserve that feedback for a little bit later on. But that's how you really find out what is happening underneath the hood, because they'll tell you whatever they want to tell you. You can listen to their calls, but until you see them in front of a customer, with a customer in their element, you really don't understand the problems. Like, you might get into the meeting and be like, oh my gosh, did they just vomit all the product knowledge like in 5 minutes? Oh my goodness. Now I see what the problem is. oh yeah, so they're taking my advice and they're letting the customer talk more, but the customer's talking about golfing and fishing. Like, we're way off topic here, not taking command of the conversation. So that's how you know what to coach to. You kind of have to see what the problem is so you know what to coach to.
I love the vomit comment. That's so good.
I love that. I hit
a nerve.
So
yeah.
true.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, guys, this has just been incredible listening to you guys, both of you talk about curiosity, because as we go through this, you understand how critical curiosity is to the sales process and really being effective salespeople or effective in sales, whatever you're doing, and internally. Because you brought it up that, talking about working together with the departments, even within a department, how it's important to encourage curiosity to go, well, why do we do it? Or why is that important to you? Because even in the alignment of sales and marketing, I think it's a lot of times you can get departments that are siloed and they just throw stuff over the fence one way or the other, or complain about without asking, why do we do it this way? Or why are you doing it that way? And and back and forth. Well, this created, as you said, Wesleyne, good results. We had great results. There's a client that came through just like we thought it was going to be, and sharing that information after. But any final thoughts before we wrap up today on this wonderful sunny summer afternoon?
I just want to add one thing just about the topic of the show is stop being the best kept secret, because when you're a salesperson and you're curious, you can stop being the best kept secret in terms of, just waiting too long. I mean, it's important that you get out there, ask those questions. And as Kurt would say, you want to stop that. It's not a badge of honor to be under the radar. So you want to step into the spotlight. And Damon, I'll give a shout out to you that you want to be the red M&M in the bowl of green. And that can mean different things. It doesn't mean you have, a lot of people think it's like, well, Gail, I can't do what you do, whether it's on TikTok or I'm doing something fun. That's my way of being the red M&M. Everybody can be their own red M&M to stop being the best kept secret. So that's my wrap up for making sure we are curious with a goal.
Awesome. Wesleyne?
I would say that this difference in a mindset in the way that we sell, being curious, asking more questions, stepping to the customer world, all of those things are hard because it's not natural to us. But I would encourage you to take one step, right? And so don't try to tackle everything that I talked about today, but the one thing that stood out to you the most, work on it. Work on it for a week, work on it for 2 weeks or a month. When you get really good at it, work on something else. Like, don't try to bite off too much. And that one thing that you do decide to change, to implement, you're going to see your sales increase. You're going to see the dynamic of your team change, the dynamic of your team change. So really, small steps are what it's all about. And that's what we talk about. It's called behavior-based skills, sales skills development for a reason. We change behavior to drive sales. That is what it's all about. You got to change those behaviors so we can increase sales.
Boom. Once again, we're dropping the mic. Moment of silence. Thanks so much. And I just want to thank everyone for being here today. I think I've written them down. John, Val, Katia, Fazia, Greg, Bonnie, Dylan, Whitney, Lal, Christina, Matt, Katie, Bruce, Adam, Kurt, and Ingor just dropped in and said hello too. Oh. And I want to say, Kurt, someone told Kurt, and we got Steve Galley in here as well.
Even Kurt stopped in, yeah.
Kurt stopped in. I just want to say, yeah, someone told him to go enjoy your vacation. Yes, you should. But thanks so much for the two of you. It's been a pleasure to talk with you today. Every time that we can do one of these conversations and learn, it's incredible. I just am overwhelmed with the amount of information and the knowledge that we get to share and listen and learn to. So thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
And the CRM thing, that was gold. So every sales manager, that is like, go back, take from what happened on this show, how you can pitch CRM without pitching CRM. See, just ask questions. That's Sorry, that was the other highlight, and I'll shut up now.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, everyone, thanks so much for being here today. Next week on the 29th of July, we have Dory Clark. It's going to be a fun show. Yeah, I don't even know what to say. Kurt is going to, this is going to be a good one. Like everyone, today, it was awesome. That's going to be awesome. We just have so much fun and appreciate everyone being here today. Go out and have a great weekend. Thanks so much, everyone. Hang around, guys. We'll talk after.